So you see the monkey is repeating itself inside of the largest shape, but still it is too large. In fact, it is the same size as the original, but I will make it smaller. So I select the shape and I double click on the scale tool and I uncheck transform objects and I make it smaller here, 25%. I check preview and this is the monkey. So clearly it resembles a little bit more a pattern with the repeat effect. Once you've done that, you save the file to the folder, rename it. So since Illustrator CS6, the things has been quite improved in terms of pattern, modifying patterns, pattern management in Illustrator. So we'll use those new options that appeared in Illustrator CS6. So it's been quite a few years now that those options are available in Illustrator. So you may unselect the shape, no problem. Click with the black arrow just beside the shape, it is unselected. And we'll modify the pattern here in the swatches panel by double-clicking on the pattern. And you see something new for you in Illustrator, that breadcrumb that appears on the top of the window. It is the isolation mode. It means we're only working on the pattern. The other things in the illustration disappear temporarily. So it's a double click on the pattern in the swatches panel. It is the edit mode of the pattern. And you should see a new panel, the pattern options panel. And we'll talk about it right now. So, what kind of repeat do we want? Grid or something else? Brick by row, try that. Brick by row, brick by column. So you see it's different from what we had in the first place. Okay. Okay, I'll choose brick by column here for my pattern. You may choose another option between those both options, brick by row or brick by column. Okay, here you have the number of copies. It doesn't really matter what you choose here, just the way things are displayed. If I choose 5 by 5, I have 5 monkeys wide, 5 monkeys vertical. If I choose 3 by 3, I only have 3 monkeys wide, 3 monkeys vertical. So it's only for your convenience to be able to understand how your pattern will look when you will apply it in a shape letter. Of course, if you choose 1 by 1, you are not able to see a lot of the options that you choose. So don't do that, not 1 by 1. Instead, you may choose 9 by 9. Okay? So you must understand that this is only how the pattern is displayed while you are editing it. You may dim copies, they are already dimmed, but you may dim them more, 40% for example. You choose. So that way it is obvious that the original pattern is in the center here. That's the only purpose of dimming. Finding the right monkey, the real monkey with its vectors and not the copies. Okay. You have here the tile, which is shown in blue. And the tile is really close. It touches the vectors. So it's a good idea to increase the gap between the monkeys by making the frame here, the tile bigger. That's what we'll do. You have two means of increasing the size of the tile by typing values here in the entry box, or manually by clicking that option. And now with that option clicked, you see handles, and you move the handles, not necessarily with the shift key. Don't use necessarily the shift key on the keyboard. You may make the size of the tile any size you want, any proportion. Okay, so that's interesting. Okay, once you've done that, we will go out of the isolation mode by clicking in the breadcrumb here on the arrow. And you should see that in the pattern has been modified in the swatches pattern, and every shape which uses that pattern is updated accordingly. I'll go into that pattern again, but wait. I unselect the object by clicking beside the object with the black arrow, and I may choose to keep that pattern in the swatches panel, that pattern as a backup, and I will work on a copy of the pattern. So I take the swatch of the pattern and bring it onto that icon, and I have a copy of the pattern, exactly the same. And I will work on the copy of the pattern. That way you may try to improve a pattern, but you will not lose its previous version if you make bad choices. So I double click on the copy. Okay, I click on that option, and with the handles, this time I will make the frame smaller than the monkey. And what happens? They are overlapping each other, of course. And that's a nice way to make patterns, interesting shapes, because when you see them from far, at first you don't see it's monkeys. And then you have the surprise to understand that these lines are in fact showing something not abstract, but monkeys. That's the surprise with patterns, but the part that may be interesting. Okay, then you have the overlapping options here, easy to understand. Now the left monkey overlaps the right, but I may choose that the right monkey overlaps the left. And that changes the pattern, of course. Same for the top monkey that overlap the bottom monkey. I may choose to make that the other way. So what's best? I think it's best when you see the tail of the monkey. Otherwise you don't understand. It's not as good. Okay, you choose, because you have another, maybe you have another pattern than me. You choose what you want. And in fact, that's the most you have to know about that pattern options panel. You go back to the illustration by clicking on the left arrow in the breadcrumb. You select your large shape, and now you have two versions of the pattern. The last one here, or the previous one. You choose which one you want to use. Once again, I will duplicate the pattern by bringing it onto the paper here. I double click on that new copy and I will try to increase the quality of the pattern. So you may do everything you want here. Choose the monkey, select the monkey, choose its background color. Why? Okay, there's something that has been going on here. Since the monkey has been transformed into a pattern, the stroke is no longer a stroke. It is a shape. It has been expanded, as you may see here, with the white arrow. You see that this is in fact a shape now, not any longer a stroke. So it's not a problem. Okay, here with the white arrow, by clicking beside the monkey and then on its blue background, I select the shape of the monkey. And I see here that it is blue, okay. And here, with the white arrow, I may select the other shape, which is orange. It is what was previously a stroke, but now it is a shape, not a stroke. So, that may be strange. Unfortunately, it works that way. Strokes are expanded. But wait, this is what you can do. Select with the white arrow, select what was previously a stroke and delete it with the delete key. And then we'll try to put on that shape a new stroke while we are in edit mode on the pattern. Okay, and now let's say I will put a stroke on the monkey, a modifiable stroke. So I put the stroke swatch in front of the background swatch in the toolbar, and then I select a color, and then I select in the window stroke panel, I'll select the weight of the stroke. Okay, I may choose, as we did earlier, to put it outside of the shape of the monkey, on the outside. Window stroke. In the French version, fenêtre contour. And don't forget to show options in the stroke panel. Otherwise, you have only the weight option, but you need the align stroke option to align it outside of the shape. So it works. Let's see, I go outside of the edit mode of the pattern with the, okay, so there's a message. Okay, it works. And when I go back in the pattern, it's okay, it's not okay, so it doesn't work. You may put stroke when you're in edit pattern mode, but they will be converted into shapes when you go out of the edit mode. So you see how it works. You have to know that it's always good to keep a backup version of your monkey with the editable stroke. So it means Illustrator still have to improve to become better, but still it works. Okay, so another thing here. Two warnings here. First warning, if you select that tool, the perspective grid tool, you will be in a mess because the perspective grid appears on the document. Okay? And you are not able to put it out of the way, out of the view. You may choose another tool, it doesn't disappear. So what's the trick here? You must have the perspective tool selected and then behind the toolbar, you certainly have this little gizmo, and on this gizmo you have a cross. You click, and then the grid disappears. So it's a trap. You only have to select the tool, and then you're stuck up with that perspective grid that stays on the document unless you close the document and reopen it. But now you know the trick. It's to have the perspective tool selected, and on the gizmo you remove the grid. So that was the first warning about the behavior of Illustrator and how to get rid of things. Something else important. If you have several different objects on in your document, and if you double-click on any of those objects, you are now in isolation mode. You see the breadcrumb here. So it's nice because you may change the objects any way you want, and you're sure that you will not, by mistake, modify the other objects. They are not modifiable because you are in isolation mode on that object. You go out with the arrow, one time, two times on the arrow. You double-click on another object, and it's the only object you are able to modify. The other ones on the illustration are not attainable. Okay, and let's see what happens in the Layers panel, Window Layers. It shows only that object. Okay, isolation mode, it's a group with a compound path inside. And when you go out of isolation mode, you have all of the objects that are visible in the Layers panel. So, when you are a beginner in Illustrator, it happens quite often that you double-click on an object by mistake and you go into isolation mode. And if you don't know what I just explained, it's not easy to understand that you go out of isolation mode with the arrow in the breadcrumb on the top of the window. So, if you wish, you may uncheck that option, you may disable that option. You go in the Preferences menu of Illustrator. In the general part of the Preferences, and here you have the double-click option to isolate, and you uncheck it, and then it will not be possible to go into isolation mode by mistake. Now, if I double-click on any object, I don't go into isolation mode. So, maybe it's good for beginners. And if you want to go in isolation mode on one object, you may right-click and choose Isolate. Okay, I go out, okay, right-click, Isolate, and I'm into isolation mode, but not by double-clicking, but by right-clicking now. So here, with no shape selected, I click with the black arrow on the place in the document where there is no shape. I will duplicate the last pattern, and I will double-click on the copy, and I will continue trying things here. Okay. With the white arrow, I unselect by clicking outside of the shape, and then I may choose to select that shape that was the stroke before and delete it. Okay. I will check that button, that options, and increase the gap between the repeat with the handles. Good. And you are able to paste a shape that you copied earlier, or make the shape right now into the edit pattern mode. That's what I will do. I will take that shape, ellipse tool. Okay, the ellipse tool. I will draw a circle. So while I'm drawing the ellipse, I'm using the Shift key. I'm releasing the button of the mouse, and then I'm releasing the Shift key. It is a constraint key, so it must be released after the button of the mouse. So it's like a monkey playing with some ball. And but now it doesn't seem like a ball, it's more like a flat disk. So we'll put a gradient into it. Okay, I'll change the. I will remove the stroke from that shape and change the color of the background. Okay. Anyway, we'll put a gradient into it, so the background is not important. But I removed the stroke. That is important. I don't need a stroke on that circle. So with the stroke swatch in front of the background swatch, I've clicked that icon to remove the stroke. And then I'm working on the background. It is important to put back the background swatch just in front of the stroke swatch after you removed the color of the stroke. Okay, let's put some gradient into it. So I think we've experienced with the gradient library. Did we? Earlier? No, we didn't? Okay, we'll use the gradient library. So in the swatches panel, let's go in the library menu. You see, these are some kind of books, library. And then you go into gradients, and then you have a lot of panels with gradients. Okay, I'll choose gems and jewels. And a gradient panel opens with small swatches, but I will increase the size by going through the menu of that new palette and choosing large thumbnail view, increasing the size of the palette with the corner, lower right corner. Okay. So you may put one of this gradient into the shape, which is still selected. Try other gradients. Each time you're trying a gradient, it is included in the swatches panel of the document. Not necessarily used by a shape in the document, but it is in the swatches panel of the document. This panel that comes from the library is not modifiable. You may use it, but not put things inside. Okay, if you want to try other gradient panels, you may go in the library here or here, it's the same, and go in the gradient and try other panels. But you are also able to go through all of the library panels by using those arrows here. But be aware that at some point you will go out of the gradient part of the library and you will end up with something else. Here, it is color groups. It is not gradients at all. So I go back with the other arrow into the gradient part of the library. And if you click a lot, at some point you will end up on another part, in another part of the library, not gradients. Okay, color groups. Okay, so be aware, you may be able to navigate through all of the gradient panels of the library, but at some point you go out of that part of the library. Okay, be aware too that some gradients have transparency into them. And also be aware that some gradients are radial and some linear. Linear gradient, radial gradient. But anyway, it's not really important because you may easily convert one gradient type to another. That's what we'll do. Let's start with a simple gradient. So don't choose a gradient with a lot of colors to begin with. Choose a gradient with not much color, radial or linear, and then we'll modify that gradient. I go into Window and Gradient. So in the French version of Illustrator, it is Fenêtre, dégradé de couleur, Window Gradient. And then with the Gradient panel, I will be able to modify the gradient that I used. Okay, I take the Gradient panel by its name and click drag to make it a floatable palette, floatable panel. And you may increase the size of that panel by using the right bottom right corner of the palette. Okay, this is where you may convert the gradient from radial to linear. You may mirror the gradient by using this reverse gradient button. Okay, you may modify the colors of the gradient. I'll try with the middle color here. Double click. Maybe you don't have a middle color. Everybody has a middle color? If you don't have like this, you just have to click just below the gradient that is shown here, and it will put a swatch, and you double click on that swatch. Okay, if you put more than one swatch, you may remove them by taking them and click drag outside of the panel. Okay, so here I double click on the swatch and I may choose to put some colors here. Okay, I will choose to work in RGB instead of CMYK because I want bright colors. It is better. And you choose whatever color you want. Okay, same thing for the other swatches if you want. Good. You see, in radial mode, it is important to be able to inverse. Okay, I go back in linear mode. Good. It is possible to modify the transparency of the gradient. Now, in fact, if I want to modify the transparency of the gradient, I will modify the transparency of the background in the appearance panel. We didn't work yet in the appearance panel. That one. But here you are able still to modify the transparency of each of the color. So it's not global transparency for the gradient, but it is for each of the swatch. Okay, interesting. You are able to make some color transparent, and when they are not at 100% opacity, there's that little checkered here just below the swatch. Okay. Okay, you see the checkered pattern here, which shows that that color is not at 100% opacity. There is transparency. Even at 90%, it shows the checkered. Okay, I put it back at 100% opacity. I don't need transparency here on my gradient. You also have the gradient tool. This one. Use the gradient tool, and with the gradient tool, you may click and drag on the shape. Of course, it works best if you are in linear mode to understand what happens here. So don't use radial gradient. I think it will be better in linear here. Okay, if I zoom out and make a large click and drag, of course, I will only see a little part of the gradient, and some students may say, there's a problem with Illustrator, it doesn't show my gradient, but you see only a part of the gradient, of course, if you made a large drag and drop, click and drag, sorry. So, here's a little one, and it works. Okay. What you see here, this bar, it is the gradient annotator. You may hide it if you wish, but it is useful. In fact, it is an evolution of Illustrator. At some point, Illustrator showed that bar on the shapes, which use gradients. It is the same thing that what you see here in the gradient panel. And you may do everything we've done earlier, double-clicking on one color, changing the color. Okay, and yes. Okay, it's also possible to move the thing, but not really useful, I think. You have the gradient tool and you click and drag and it's okay. Okay, so it's always useful to put the gradients into the swatches panel of the document. So you may move the gradient from the toolbar into the gradient, the swatches panel, or I think if you take it here, it will work too. Okay, so now you have the gradient included inside of the swatches panel of the document, so you'll be able later to put it on other shapes. It doesn't change a thing at our circle here, but at least you'll be able to use it on other shapes. Here I will make the gradient, finally I will make it radial, because I want the circle to look like a sphere. So I make the gradient radial. The circle is selected, of course, that's why when I change here, you see the change on the shape. I'll make one color darker than the others, okay. No, that one must be white. So I put all of the cursors to max, so I have white. That one may disappear, I'll take it out of the panel. That one will be darker. Okay, so it looks like a sphere, but if I put the impact of light at another place of the sphere, it will be better. Okay, so that way it looks a little bit more like a sphere. Okay, there should be some shadows here, so maybe I'll put another swatch here and with okay, dark like that. Okay, I'm trying to, okay, I must put the same value in. If I want gray, I must put the same value in each of the entry box. Okay, it's not very good, so there's another way to do it, but it's too complicated. Usually I don't do it that way, but okay. No, it's not very good. Don't do that. No shadow on that sphere. Just two colors is okay. Okay, I go out of the edit mode of the pattern and I'll check what it looks like when I use it on the shape. So I select my large shape with the black arrow, and in the background color I use my pattern here. Okay, that looks like it. So you don't see clearly that those are monkeys. It needs a stroke. Since they overlap, we will need a stroke to understand what it looks like, what it is. Anyway, okay. So once again, I will duplicate my pattern. Don't forget to save your document from time to time. under a different name. It's better. So you will have previous versions in case you erase everything or make bad choices. Okay, so this is the duplicate that I may move just beside the other one. Okay, I double click on that duplicate, and here I will put a star in my system here, my pattern. So I use the star tool. Okay, so the star tool, you may choose any number of branches that you want. Use it that way. Click, not click and drag, just click, and when you click with any of these two of those tools, you have entry boxes to choose values. So you may choose the inner values of the radius, the inner radius value, the outer radius value, the number of branch on the star. You click OK, and you have the star here. So, what is happening here? Something strange. The star is filled with the pattern. It's not good at all. So, while the star here is selected, I'll make the stroke disappear, first thing. Then I'll work on the background and put a gradient or a solid color into it, but not a pattern. Don't use patterns into patterns. It will not work. Unless we do something we'll do in a few minutes, but you have to know how it works. So only use gradients or solid colors into your shapes, into patterns. Okay. Okay, there's another way to draw stars, of course. You may draw them by click and drag. That's what I will do here. I show you. I use the star tool, and then I click and drag, and then I choose the number of branches by using the up and down arrows on the keyboard. Of course, the minimum is 3, so I have a triangle. That way you see how to make triangles in Illustrator. They are stars with 3 branches. Okay, number of branches with up and down arrows on the keyboard. Then there are some keys to use on the keyboard. If you are on a Windows PC, that will be Control key. Since you are on a Mac, it is the Command key, the Apple key, CMD key, and you may choose the second diameter, the outer diameter of the star, as you may see. When it's okay, you release the Command key, and then when you move the mouse, it is the size of the star. Okay? Is it working? The size of the star. And then when I use the Command key on the Mac keyboard or Control key on the Windows keyboard, I may choose the diameter of the outer diameter. Okay. Let's say it's okay for me that shape. I release the Command key on the keyboard, and then I move the mouse and choose the size of the star. Okay, I release the button of the mouse, because when I was doing that, the button mouse has been down all the time. And then I have the star. Of course, I'm still able to change its dimension by using the free transform tool, Shift key, and choose to increase or decrease the size. With the Alt key plus the Shift key, it transforms by its center, and it may be useful. Okay. Then I may duplicate the star by moving it with the black arrow and the Alt key, and I have several stars. Good. So you have a pattern, a complicated pattern, of course. I may put some stars behind the monkey. It is quite as if you were working on a regular illustration. you are in edit mode on a pattern, but all of the tools are available. So if I want to put the star behind the monkey, I will use the layer panel, window layers, and I will see what's inside here. Okay, make the thumbnails a little bit smaller because there are too much objects here. Instead of 80 pixels, I will choose large, and they are not so large. It's okay. So the object here is selected. You see this is this one. I take it here in the layers panel and put it behind the compound path of the monkey, and that's okay. Okay. So I go out of the edit mode and I check if that new pattern is better than the other ones. I'll select my large shape. Oh, by the way, you see that the frame here has followed the inclination of the shape. You may reset it with... Okay. Sorry, that option is not available on that shape. I was talking about the reset bounding box option, but it's not available on that shape, so forget it. Okay, so I select that large shape and check what the pattern looks like on that shape. Remember, you are able to resize the pattern inside by double-clicking on the scale tool, unchecking transform objects, and choosing the size you want here. You type the percentage and hit the tab key on the keyboard, and then it appears, if you have preview checked, of course. Good. Okay, and last thing we'll see today with patterns. Okay, now I will once again duplicate my pattern and then double click on it, and we'll make now a pattern inside of a pattern. So I'll take a rectangle tool. I'll draw a square by holding down the shift key on the keyboard, releasing the mouse button, then the shift key on the keyboard. Once again, a problem, the pattern is inside of it. That's not the pattern that I want. I will use another pattern here, maybe that one. Choose a simple pattern, not too complicated. Change its size by double-clicking on the scale tool, and you change the size here. You type the percentage, then the tab tool on the keyboard. Okay, so this is a pattern inside of a pattern, and it does not work unless you expand the pattern, you make it not modifiable anymore, you transform it into vectors. Okay?